All right, guys, so today we got to talk about what appears to be a hate crime hoax, or at the very least, that is what some outlets are calling it. They're calling it a hoax, as a black university employee was arrested for allegedly painting racist graffiti on a school building. Now, the school that we're talking about here is Emory University. And Emory University is basically being accused of covering up the race of the suspect while the investigation was ongoing, basically leaving out important information that can be used to identify this suspect, while at the same time playing up the whole race narrative, right? That this is a racially motivated crime, right? But before I get into this, let's watch a news clip of this incident back when it actually happened, so you guys can get full context on the situation. Take a look.
Details tonight about vandalism that included graffiti, racial slurs, and the swastika at the Emory Autism Center. Channel 2 investigative reporter Mark Winnie has been investigating this story for days. And Mark, you spoke to the mom of one of the center's clients. She told you she is deeply hurt by this.
Now, after an open records request, we got an Emory police report that mentions burglary, a building vandalized, swastikas, and the N-word written in hallways and office space, vandalized vending machines, and a report of a shattered rear glass door. But there's another kind of hurt.
And they serve everyone. And I don't understand why someone would vandalize a place that's really trying to do good work and trying to help and make a difference.
Donna Johnson says, as the mother of a 23-year-old daughter who's been served there almost her whole life, she knows the Emory Autism Center is a place of help.
They have helped us in so many ways.
So she's sad to learn it's been targeted with symbols of hurt.
It breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart.
We're told that photos depict vandalism employees discovered Monday inside the Emory Autism Center on the Emory University Claremont campus, including the N-word, scrawled a number of times on walls, at least 2 of those times backwards, and at least 1 swastika on a wall, too. An email statement from Emory University spokesperson Laura Diamond says in part, quote, staff members arrived to discover graffiti depicting racial slurs and swastikas and damage to physical property. The EAC is working closely with the Emory University Police Department to investigate this incident. In a message emailed to faculty and staff, university leaders stated that these acts of racism and anti-Semitism are painful for all of us at the EAC and in the Emory community. They will not be tolerated, and every effort will be made to bring the perpetrators to justice.
As long as there are people like this that do things like this, our laws have to be constructed in such a way that they can be adequately addressed.
We turn to former DeKalb District Attorney Robert James for expert analysis.
Does Georgia's new hate crimes statute apply here?
I believe so. I believe that this is why it was drafted and passed in the first place, to address conduct like this.
Our information is an area where the N-word appeared is near workspace occupied by, among others, 2 African-American women, and the swastika we have a picture of was in a hallway near a Jewish man's office.
Our children, many of them, they don't see the world as we experience it. They wouldn't understand what these symbols and words mean. And that makes me really sad.
Now, that message to faculty and staff of the Emory Autism Center also says our priority remains the well-being and safety of our faculty, staff, learners, patients and their families, and upholding our values and Emory's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it lists resources of a support nature. Live, Mark Winnie, Channel 2 Action.
All right, guys, so I got to say, that was probably some of the weirdest voice commentary in a news report that I've ever heard. But continuing on with this story, at the time, right, of this incident, Emory University had basically told WSB-TV that, quote, these acts of racism and anti-Semitism are painful for us all at the EAC and in the Emory community. This will not be tolerated, and every effort will be made to bring the perpetrators to justice. A week later, the perpetrator was charged with burglary, 2nd degree, by Georgia law enforcement and named as Roy Lee Gordon Jr. The College Fix reported on August 25th that the school was refusing to reveal Gordon's race and that he wasn't charged with a hate crime, even though such slurs would typically lead to such a charge. Okay, so the actual suspect here has been caught, right? His name is Roy Lee Gordon Jr. Here's a picture of him. Okay, and as you can see here, he is black. So let's read a little bit more here about this situation. The Fix reported that the school refused to provide a copy of the police report, arrest warrant, or photos of the alleged vandalism. When Gordon was arrested on August 20th, that actually is a mistake from the Daily Wire. What they really mean is that when Gordon was issued an arrest warrant, right? That's what they really meant here. So he was issued an arrest warrant on August 20th. Emory released a much more sanitized statement saying, Emory University is committed to fostering a safe and inclusive campus for all faculty, staff, students, patients, and their families. Gordon was arrested on September 22nd following the warrant issue a month earlier. Emory released another statement about the matter, identifying Gordon as a former part-time / temporary employee at Emory. The statement also addressed the racism inherent in Gordon's act without mentioning his race, leading many to question whether the perpetrator was white, something that certainly would have been mentioned if it were the case. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution finally obtained a arrest photo of Gordon showing he was black. The College Fix noted that the school knew this but refused to say so for more than a month. The school told the Fix on Thursday, unfortunately, we are unable to share any additional details beyond what is in the statement. Quote, Emory is unable to share personnel information and cannot speculate his intentions, said an Emory spokesperson. All right, so essentially what is happening here, guys, is that this guy went and painted the N-word and swastikas in this autism center, right, on campus. And Emory University released a strong statement condemning the racism and the anti-Semitism from this act of vandalism. And guys, if you was to read that statement, you would think that the perpetrator of this incident, that the description of them would be white, skinhead, neo-Nazi wearing a Trump hat. That's what you would think, just reading that statement. That's what most people think. So I found it interesting that when the suspect was actually identified, right, how Emory University basically released a statement that's more watered down that left out the parts about racism, okay? And the suspect happens to be black, and they definitely knew that this person was black because this person was a employee at the university. So they knew who he was, they knew what he looked like, but yet when asked for a description of this person, they refused to give it out. And you would think that they would want to give out the description of this person so that people on campus could identify who is spray painting the N-word and swastikas on campus, right? So that students and staff and teachers could be on the lookout, right? And protect themselves from this perpetrator, right? You would think they would do it for public safety. However, they refused to give out information when asked. So finally, when the dude is arrested, now all of a sudden the photo comes out and lo and behold, it's not a white skinhead neo-Nazi wearing a Trump hat. It's a black dude, right? It's a black man. Which in my opinion, I found that to be interesting that Emory University refused to give out that information when they knew about it. Because there's no doubt in my mind that if this person would have been white, right? If the perpetrator would have been white, they would have been shouting at the moon, right? Saying that this is, you know, a white person that committed this act of racism, right? And we got to condemn the hate. But when the suspect was actually black, everything, all that stuff kind of got thrown out of the window. It kind of got watered down. Just like the charges, right? He wasn't charged with a hate crime. At least thus far, he hasn't been charged with one. Even though, again, in that news report, you guys saw it. It was like, oh yeah, no, this should be charged with a hate crime. This is exactly what this law is in place for, these type of incidents. But this person wasn't charged with a hate crime. I think he was just charged like second-degree burglary or something like that, right? And, you know, the thing is, guys, this seems to be a trend, which kind of bothers me. Because I talked about an incident that happened in Dallas, the mass shooting that happened in Dallas. I don't know if you guys remember that. But at the time, there was a newspaper out in Texas that refused to release the identifying characteristics and information on that suspect as well, right? And that suspect happened to be a black man with dreads. And they did not want to put out the information because they didn't want black people to be stereotyped, right? They didn't want to create any type of negative stereotypes or negative impressions of black people. So they was like, we're not going to release this information. And I find this to be a very, very dangerous and slippery slope. And the reason why is because when crimes and stuff like this happens, it's important that people know what the person may or may not have looked like, right? And to be on the lookout for that person so that they can protect themselves and others. But yet you have this push from the left to try to cover up the identities of anybody that is, I guess, a person of color, whatever you want to define them, basically non-white, that commits an act of violence or a crime, right? They don't want to share their identity. But anytime there's a mass shooting, right? Anytime there's a mass shooting, the first thing that the liberal media jumps to is to try to say that that person is white, right? They're white and they're conservative, or, you know, they're obsessed with guns, okay? They have no issues stereotyping those people, right? They have no issues giving out description. When that mass shooting happened in Atlanta, right, in Georgia, a few months ago, at the Asian massage parlors, and there was a manhunt for that person, we knew the description of the suspect immediately because he was white. We knew who he was. The liberal media and the police weren't like, oh, no, we're going to hide this. We're not going to put this out here because we want to protect white people, right? We want to protect white people from being stereotyped as mass shooters. No, that's not what happened. They put the information out there so that people will be on the lookout and that they can find this person. But now all of a sudden, when it comes to stuff like this, you know, in mass shootings that are perpetuated by black people, oh no, we got to cover up the identity of the suspect. We got to make sure that nobody knows what they actually look like, right? So we can protect a certain group of people. Again, I just find this trend to be interesting, right? And that's why, you know, I don't necessarily know if this is a hoax per se, because I don't want to get into the slippery slope of trying to say that anytime a black person commits an act of hate or something that would be considered an act of hate if a white person did it, that automatically means that it wasn't an act of hate just because it was a black person, right? And that it was a hoax, okay? Because this guy, I mean, who knows? He could be mentally ill, or maybe he could actually harbor some ill feelings and some hatred towards black people, even as a black person, right? There are black people out there like that, okay? So he could have meant the N-word in a derogatory way. He could be a neo-Nazi sympathizer, right? He could be a black person and be like, oh yeah, I kind of agree with some of this neo-Nazi stuff. That's where the swastika could come from. So I just want to say, look, I would be careful to categorize everything that appears to be a hate crime as a hoax just because it was committed by a black person, as if black people can't commit hate crimes, right? I actually do think that this person should be charged with a hate crime. Whether or not he actually meant it or not as a hoax, he should be charged with it because he basically pretended to commit a hate crime if he actually does not have those feelings. You see what I'm saying? But it definitely seems like a cover-up. And this is something that I've read about before in the past. And I think that this trend kind of bothers me because, you know, it's one of those things where I don't think that you should be trying to hide the identifying characteristics of a suspect that could potentially be dangerous or violent, right? Regardless of their race, right? I think it's important for the public to be informed about what these individuals may or may not look like. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.